This is part 4 of 4. The dinosaur Stegosaurus. What are the function of its plates? Not overheating is paramount, particularly when one's weight is in the tons. When it's big, keeping warm is easy, while keeping cool is difficult. When I was little, my dad was a bit bigger and also had some extra weight. So at 60 degrees, he was probably fine and I was a bit cold. Overheating is a serious threat for today's biggest land animal, and it lives in a warm climate, as did Stegosaurus. So elephant behaviors and adaptations to keep cool. Behaviors: seek shade, rest during the hottest part of the day, es hora de la siesta, sí. Bathe in water, as well as bathing in mud and dust. The mud and dust will reflect sunlight, so it acts like sunscreen. They also clean off parasites, which is pretty nice. Physical adaptations: elephant can fill its ears with extra blood and can fan the ears to cool the blood even faster. And this also fans the body. And this can do something else. As the wind blows across the body, it swirls around its sparse short body hair to increase convective heat loss. So it's an important cooling mechanism in an elephant. Besides in the ears, there are thermal windows across the body to help cool off. So as you might expect in something that weighs 4 or 5 tons, it has extensive adaptations to try to keep cool. These areas, these thermal windows, are highly vascularized skin, indicated by the yellow numbered patches in this pretty diagram by Weissenbolk. Care to guess what long rabbit ears are for besides catching sounds? They have a large surface area to volume ratio, so they're big and thin, with an extensive blood vessel network, so they're excellent for cooling off. They also stick up off the top of the body. Rabbits in warmer climates, would they have bigger ears or smaller ears? Hopefully you're thinking bigger ears. What can you tell me about this ball of fur? Can you list all the adaptations you can see just in this one photo? So rabbits easily overheat. Have you ever chased one? What happens? It will stay still until you're close, then bolt a short distance into brush if it's around, trying to hide. What happens if you go after it again and again and again? The poor old thing won't just become exhausted, but it will easily overheat. You can just walk right up to it, which would be really bad if I were a predator and eat rabbits. Let's look at Paraceratherium, a rhino relative. It was the largest land animal, except possibly for a couple elephant forms. Paleontology, the elephant, and the mastodon, Mammut borsoni. They're estimated at 15, 16, 17 tons. Paraceratherium is estimated 15 to 20 tons. The modern African elephant is 2 to 6 tons. So if we look at Paraceratherium reconstruction there, what do you think may be missing? Maybe big ears? Maybe not. Let's look at living cousins of Paraceratherium, the rhinos. Perhaps Paraceratherium had folded skin as in the greater Indian rhino to keep cool. Endo and others conclude that the perfuse blood vessels, cutaneous muscles just below the skin, transmit heat to the skin folds for adapting to high temperatures in tropical grasslands. They have cool folds. Or maybe it just had lots of capillaries close to the skin surface, lots of thermal windows, as in the elephant. This very thick-skinned one, just below the epidermis of the skin, are profuse capillaries of the dermis that may aid in conducting heat to the environment. There are no sweat glands in the white rhino. Would that be enough to cool an 18-ton Paraceratherium? So how do giraffes cool off? Panting through the nasal cavity is important, but not enough for large mammals up to 2 tons. Most mammals don't sweat to cool off like we do. We're very oddball. We have sweat glands everywhere. Medium to large-sized mammals usually have sweat glands, maybe just on a couple spots on the legs. So we're very unusual. Most mammals cool by panting through the nasal cavity, not panting like a dog, evaporating water off the tongue. Dogs are also a little unusual. So they pant through the nasal cavity like this. Isn't that lovely? So what happens is they blow, as they exhale, they blow cold air over the nasal mucosa. That evaporates the water, and that cools off the blood in the nasal mucosa inside your nasal cavity. And that cool blood can cool the brain and even help cool the body off. So something like a mouse just pants through its nasal cavity when it overheats. A giraffe doesn't have any elephantine ears, but it does sweat. Ossicones have a high blood supply. They might be heat radiators, and they likely are. Ossicones are the horns on top of the head. The body shape of the giraffe helps some, as it moves with tall, narrow legs and neck, namely a high surface area for them relative to volume. The air swirling around convects heat away. Near the ground, there's less wind and more heat, so long legs also keep the body high off the ground in cooler conditions. You see that in desert camels as well. Smart little camels they are. As in zebras, tigers, and jaguars, giraffes also have patterns and colors that help regulate body temperature, as well as for communication. Same species billboard, sexual display, non-aggression or aggression. Pandas have some great non-aggression color patterns. And of course, patterns and colors act as camouflage, breaking up the body shape to hide from predators and even parasites at times. The patterned fur acts like a network of thermal windows. Dilation of blood vessels under the patches transfers heat to the environment, and sweat glands under the patches are also more active. So giraffes do quite a few things to cool off. What about a polar bear living in freezing water? They overheat? Life in the ice is nice if so adapted. This marine mammal needs sea ice to hunt. Seals are preferred prey. They swim up to 80 kilometers a day in the cold Arctic waters. They roll around the snow to dry off and bathe. Isn't that hilarious? Polar bears overheat? Here's some nice ice life adaptations. They're big, largest bear. Can you list all the advantages of a large body size? What about the disadvantage of being large? There's always things to consider when you're studying animals. Polar bears have thick fur, thick fat layer, superior sense of smell. They can smell seal on ice at 32 kilometers away. That's 20 miles. So if you're out in the Arctic and there are polar bears around, or within 20 miles, and you don't have protection, uh-oh. Polar bears have large, wide feet for a number of reasons. They have furry bottoms and partial webbing for walking on the snow. Hair on the bottom also insulates, of course. And these big paws with partial webbing are also good for swimming. They only swim with their front paws. They use their rear legs for steering. Polar bears have hollow, clear fiber optic hair for scattering light. The fur looks white, and that's for camouflage. The light bounces down these fiber optic hairs to its black skin. Skin absorbs light and heat, yay! And the thick undercoat traps the heat, so they're very well insulated in their hair, skin, and fat layer. So why does a polar bear splay out on the snow? A healthy polar bear is so well insulated and good at absorbing heat that it may need to cool off, so it sploots all over the ice and snow. So how does a fetus in a dolphin not get killed by overheating? Scientists calculate that a pregnant dolphin, which has thick blubber to retain heat, should overheat enough to kill its fetus. That would be very bad. Yay, this does not happen. You should look up how these are adapted to stay cool. Sauropods, how did the biggest cool off? Besides using shade, did they even travel at night? That would be a good strategy. Using water, mud, or dust to keep cool like an elephant. Did long necks just lose heat from the slender parts, the neck and the tail? Have lots of thermal windows in the skinny parts? Or do they have lots of thermal windows across the body, as possibly in crocodilian scutes? Zerkis reported in 1992 a find with skin spines, so no bony score, just a keratin core, at least along the tail. He thought these keratin spines may have continued all the way along the top of the spine, looking like this, which certainly makes sense from the viewpoint of regulating body temperature, or cooling off if you're weighing how many tons in a sauropod? So having keratin spines conducting convect heat away would have been a great way to cool off 5, 10, 20, or 40 plus tons walking around during the Jurassic or Cretaceous periods. Keratin spines would rarely be preserved with the skeleton. It seems likely that all sauropods would have had some sort of frill, or perhaps a sail. And over the last 30 years, have you seen sauropod reconstructions sporting frills? Here's a Margosaurus, La Marga lizard from Argentina, La Marga Formation, early Cretaceous. It had 2 rows of bony spines down the neck and back, and then 1 row along the tail. It may have looked something like this, sporting a cooling frill. What are the odds that the most gigantic didn't have a few adaptations to keep cool? So going back to Stegosauridae, Here's variation among the family. What does the diversity of the family tell one about the spines and plates? Need more data, more research, and in what habitat did each live? And that could take a long time to figure out. We need a lot more data. So what do you think? Stegosaurus plates act as cooling fins at all? Is cooling or display communication the primary function of Stegosaurus plates? Perhaps it's moot and they're both important, but most of the recent literature has not favored the cooling fin hypothesis. Did I convince you that adaptations for regulating temperature, particularly cooling in the very large, are vital? Why the great variation among Stegosaurus from spines to plates? Perhaps they all function as fin coolers, as I said before, and variations in spines and plates and body size are due to habitat openness, such as scrubland versus woodland, where the amount of sunshine and wind varies, as well as food quality and distribution. As in open habitat, by definition, has plants at a lower density, so you have to travel farther to get enough forage. And that selects for larger body size in medium and large plant eaters, and typically has less nutritious plants. Think about the extreme of desert plants. Tough to eat, often not as nutritious as, say, a nice meadow. And of course, if you're eating less nutritious plants and you're a pretty big plant eater, that also selects for larger body size. In general, for a medium or large plant eater, one expects larger body size and more open habitats. So the big body with big plates of Stegosaurus stenops might be explained by such an adaptation. Given the arrangement and size of the plates and large blood supply, as well as the vital need for cooling adaptations in a giant, I think their primary function is as cooling fins. When you see something odd on a land animal and it isn't for feeding, then your first thought should be, is it for social signaling and mating? And the second should be, the often neglected, is it for temperature regulation, especially in a big animal? And of course, always keep in mind that structures often have more than one function. So going back to structural dimorphism, such as in the elephant seals, where it's quite extreme. What's the sly-eyed one thinking? She's thinking, typical male, nothing but excuses, only talks a lot when lying. Did you figure out why males are typically showy and courtly, unlike discerning females? Take a look at the blue-footed booby dance. Dance, little man, dance. It's got to sing for its supper and dance for dessert. If explaining maleness evades you, think about how the cost of reproduction differs for each sex, such as an extreme example in the elephant seals. If that doesn't work, maybe you hold something in cliches. Males are cheap. You know what? That's all, folks. I thank you very much.